y'all, welcome back to this week's episode of AMA Friday with Amy Miller, Recruiting in Yoga Pants. So this week, follow up to our last couple of videos that we've done. We've talked a lot about, started with right to represent. So this is like a document that some agencies will ask job seekers to complete, which gives them permission to represent them with the agency's clients. So pros and cons to that. You can go check out that video up above if you are so inclined. That led to a discussion last week, I'll link to that one as well, about how these big companies leverage staffing agencies for, you know, contingent staff or temp to hire roles, things like that. And so we talked about like VMSs and all of that. Just go watch the video. I'm not going to repeat it all. Which led to some interesting questions from all of you. So thank you for those that commented, sent me emails, DM'd me, commented on LinkedIn. Very common theme in some of these comments. Y'all are super curious how in the hell multiple agencies can be working with the same client on the same position, but be paying all different rates. How is such a thing possible? Because it doesn't make sense. If a job pays $30 an hour, it should pay $30 an hour, right? It's the same job at the same client company in the same location. What are we doing? Friends, I'm going to tell you how a bill rate helps to create a pay rate. Where's the whiteboard? We're going to need to write some of this down. Okay. So, when a staffing agency is engaged with a company for temporary or temp to hire roles, there's an agreement that has to be signed. Now, sometimes the staffing agency has their own agreement and they send it to a client and the client signs it or doesn't. I've had agreements signed, no questions asked. I've had agreements absolutely ripped to shreds by company lawyers. I've had agreements thrown out and they sent me their agreement that I had to sign. Sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't, depending on how bad I wanted the client. But when we think about these large accounts where, again, we've got hundreds of roles, multiple agencies, things like that, it is not uncommon for the company to have a master agreement, right? And so the preferred suppliers, so that PSL, preferred supplier list, the agencies that have signed that master agreement and have entered into an arrangement with that client basically have access to that VMS. They can log in, they can see the available roles, and they can determine which ones they want to recruit for, and they can submit candidates to those roles through that system, right? So we covered all of that in the last couple weeks. Now let's talk about how that translates into a pay rate. So the master agreement says, you know, we're going to pay this much for, you know, these kinds of roles, right? Sometimes it's a specific dollar amount. Sometimes they deal with percentages. There's just a lot of variables. So I'm not even going to try to get into all the different ways that that could be done, but let's just dumb it down. Let's just give you a real basic example to try to illustrate this point. So we have ABC Corp, and they need to hire 100 customer service reps, okay? And they put that out to the VMS, and the bill rate attached to that is $50 an hour. Please do not at me if these numbers do not make sense or because I'm making them up, okay? Is 50 too much? Is it not enough? I don't know. Depends on a lot of things. Just, it's illustrative purposes, people. So let's say that's what they've agreed to. They're going to pay every agency who brings them a person $50 an hour for that person. So you have agency A, B, and C, they're all, signed the master agreement and they have the ability to submit candidates to this VMS and charge that client $50 an hour. So they now have to create their pay rate. Now, some companies will have a blanket agreement that says the bill rate is 50 and the pay rate is 38. You don't get to negotiate. You don't get to change it. This is what we have decided. We want our people to make $38 an hour, and we will pay you $50 an hour to get them. That leaves a $12 an hour spread, right? Or gross margin that A, B, and C. Oh no, it's not pure profit. Oh no. What do you think happens to that $12 an hour? Taxes, overhead, office rent, recruiter commission, pens, my whiteboard. I bought that myself. You see where I'm going with this? So this spread, this whatever margin between the bill rate and the pay rate is what the agency gets on a gross profit basis, but all of their expenses come out of that, right? Hopefully it's a moneymaker. I've worked with some clients that it cost me money to do business with them. Talk about that in a moment if time permits. We'll see how it goes. But let's say that doesn't exist. Maybe they just say $50 an hour, figure out your own pay rate. We don't care. That's definitely feasible, right? So A might be bold and say, well, we're going to pay people $40 an hour. We're cheap. We can operate on a very slim margin. Cool. B, not so much. C's maybe somewhere in the middle. I don't know. That's not really the middle, but anyway. So this is how we could potentially see different pay rates for the same job. So it comes down to really what is, first of all, the agreement with the organization. Do they have a specified pay rate? Many do. I would not be shocked by that. I don't know that it's the norm. It wasn't when I was doing it a million years ago. Things may have changed. I get that. But there could be a defined pay rate. But in my experience, a lot of times the agency was allowed to set that. And hopefully they are factoring in, what are the going, labor market say? Is this a reasonable pay rate for our employees? Do we maybe offer great benefits on top of it? I've had benefits through staffing agencies before as a contractor, right? So sometimes that's an option. So you want to factor all those things in before you just jump on the highest pay rate. There's multiple things that you want to think about. One is obviously going to be, what are some of the other perks? Are there benefits? Are there other things that I would receive as an employee of the agency? Because in these contract situations, your employer is the agency. You are doing work at the client site. You're doing work on behalf of big corporation, but your employer is the agency. So think about that. Like, what are some of the upsides of that employer? Benefits, whatever. Something else to think about, and this, we kind of talked about this last week, right? The questions I told y'all to ask, what kind of relationship does this agency actually have? Because let me tell you, obviously there's a big spread here. I'm probably going to A all day long. That's a lot more money. But let's be more realistic for a second, and let's say it's between these two. One's paying 30, one's paying 32. If the one paying 32 has never placed someone at the corporation and they're newly on the PSL and I would be their first ever submission and the odds are maybe not in my favor, but company B has 20 people on site and the account manager takes the hiring manager to lunch every week, and like, what am I more likely to get, right? Which job is more likely gonna pan out for me? So those are just some of the nuances that, again, you as the job seeker, unfortunately, aren't always gonna have the visibility into some of those things. But this is where I want you to think about the questions that you can ask. What other perks, what other benefits, what other, upside would I be eligible for in addition to the hourly rate? Is the hourly rate negotiable? I would just flat out say, like, hey, I saw this role posted multiple places. There's at least 2 other agencies that have, shared the exact same post at a higher pay rate. Is this negotiable? Like, I would love to work with you, agency, whatever one you are. But, like, is this the best I can do? So it's okay. It's always no if you don't ask, right? It's no problem to just say, is this negotiable? I would be targeting, Anyway, I'd be targeting $33 an hour or whatever and see what they say. And then finally, understand, like I said last week, understand what history exists. Have they made placements with this client before? Do they have a good working relationship? Is it brand new to them? I want to spend my time on the things that have a good ROI. I want to know that I have a serious chance of being considered. I want to align to the recruiting team and the agency, even if it means signing a right to represent, that I feel like has a good shot of getting me forward momentum. Hourly rate is a big part of it, and I understand that, and we are always going to be looking for the most money we can get. I'm right there with you. Okay, I'll work for the money too. But there are some other nuances and other things that I would encourage you to at least ask about so that you can make a really, really informed decision. So hopefully, let me grab this board again without knocking things over. Hopefully this gives you an idea. So again, companies, for the most part, staffing agencies, for the most part, generally have some flexibility, and they can determine what is the appropriate pay rate based on their goals, based on the percentage margin spread they need to hit, based on what their commission package looks like for their recruiters. There's so many things that can help determine what that pay rate can or should be, and that's one of the big reasons why it could be different from agency to agency. It's not necessarily nefarious. It's not necessarily a bad thing. But these companies, just like you and I, they're in it to make money. And if they're not making money, if that spread is not giving them actual income and gross profit, or, well, I guess it'd be net profit, is it really a great client? Yeah, we're out of time. But if you're interested in hearing about my money losing accounts that I tried desperately to fire, maybe we'll talk about it in a future video. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, I hope that helps y'all. I hope that clears up some of the mystery around this. Ask those hard questions. You deserve to know. Good recruiters will tell you. All right, y'all. See you next week.